Good morning, friends. Happy Friday. I am your host, Jennifer Garibay, and I am here with the lovely Claire M. Davis of Traction Resume. And today we are going to be chatting about professional development, LinkedIn, resumes. We'll be taking your questions. I know it's quite early. There may not be some of you awake, but if you're catching this on the replay, I'll be asking Claire some great questions if we don't have people participating. So hopefully there'll be some great information here. But without further ado, want to introduce Claire. She is absolutely fantastic. She was rated one of JobScan's top follows on LinkedIn for 2021. So if you do not follow Claire, you should be following Claire. And we met probably about a month or two ago on LinkedIn, and she has just been absolutely fantastic. So Claire, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your business.
Oh, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it was such a pleasure getting to know you a couple months ago. You were just like a spark of bright energy in a very tricky area of business, job searching. So my pleasure all the way around. So I started Traction Resume because I was laid off 4 times. And I feel like when we come through struggles like that and learn from it, that's when we can serve others the best, because we can immediately relate and then come from a place of experience and expertise. So my background is in recruiting. I have a degree in journalism from Ohio University, go Cats, and also worked in medical sales and marketing. So all of those things combined really taught me some specific principles that everybody can apply to get their career moving in the direction that they want to go. So I'm really excited to be here this morning. I could talk about resumes and interviews and job seeking all day long. So I appreciate your time. And I want to know who put that amazing, did you create that intro for your video? It was excellent.
No, actually my VA created it. She's amazing.
I'm very awesome.
To have some amazing help. I do create some of my own stuff, but ever since I got her, she's definitely helped step up my game. So just goes to show, find good help, guys.
Yeah.
Useful. But thanks so much for being here, Claire. Guys, please do submit your questions if you have anything that you want to ask us. But in the meantime, I get this question a lot, and I think it would be a good question to ask you to start with. So let's say we have a job seeker out there. They want to redo their resume. They're not really sure how to start. What would be your advice for them in that situation?
If this is someone who's coming from, right out of school and they're going entry level, I would say first go to the internet, right? We have the most powerful tool at our fingertips right now, which is Google. So I would say go find a template or use a Word template, and that will start to guide you in the sections for kind of what you need to fill in. And while you're filling in the information, because a lot of these great templates will guide you with what to include, I want to switch the intention that most people have for a resume, which is talking all about their experience and everything they've ever done, to focusing on only the things that you've done that relate to what you want to do next. That's really the key with a good resume, is you want to be painting this picture for a potential hiring manager that you have value from your experience that you can lend to their organization. That's the sweet spot. So you do want to include your education. You do want to include your most recent roles within the last 10, maybe 15 years. But your focus should be what results you got in those 10 to 15 years that will make you a success and make their life easier. So that's where I would start. It's a little bit of mindset and a little bit of a template.
I love that. I think really getting in on the impact. Essentially, we're saying the same thing, but that's definitely what I say to my clients, is you want to get to that impactful space. So definitely, we don't need to know every little thing you did, getting coffee for your boss and things like that, unless maybe in your future role, that's something you're going to do. Maybe you're going to need to do coffee runs and things like that. So make sure it is relevant to the space you're trying to enter. So I love that, Claire. I think that's great advice. What about on the other hand? Maybe someone has, they've been in the job field for 15 years. They're coming back to their resume again. What would you say for someone who's been in the field for a longer amount of time? Because I know a lot of times with those older experiences, it can get harder to remember, right? What you did in certain roles. So do you have any advice in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let's start at the beginning. So when I was laid off the third time, I remember standing in FedEx and I had to mail this sample for this medical sales product that I had. And I just stood there staring at the cashier thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do next? I just got this call and she said my position's no longer available and I only have access to email for the rest of the evening. That was it. It was, thank you so much for your service. We're shutting off all of your communication this evening. And that's a tricky place to be in. And I think a lot of people can relate. And so why that was so important for me was, first I took care of business and did what I needed to do, but then I rushed home. And when I was rushing home, I realized there's no reason to be limiting my focus on my contacts and all of those. There's no reason to be gathering that information at the final hour. So this is what I really encourage anybody who is in business today to do. Start before you're ready. And what I mean is, don't wait till you get that call and that says you have a short window of time to gather relevant metrics, contacts that you can take beyond the role and the name tag that you're wearing. Any kudos that you'll find in your email that you won't eventually have access to. You want to start systematically gathering those things throughout your job search. That way, when push comes to shove, whether you want to make the move or you have a layoff or a merger or a change up in the organization where you're changing teams or departments and you don't have access to those things anymore, you want to already have been logging these important critical details on your career throughout. So start before you're ready, folks, is what I would start with. And then the next piece is writing a resume is very similar in process and intention for any level. So whether you're just starting out and you're entry level, or you've been in the industry 5 years and you're not quite sure if you're in the industry you want to be in quite yet, or maybe you've been in corporate for 15 years and you love it, but you want to get promoted. So whether your resume is fresh or you haven't touched it for 30 years, the goal is really the same. You want to position yourself as the number one solution to the role's problem that you want. So if you've been in business for 15 years, very likely you have a track record and you have a system for the way that you get things done and the way that you get results. So we all have our strengths, right? I mean, Jennifer, obviously you are like full of energy. You are a super connector and always motivated and thinking about the next upcoming thing, fresh ideas. So that's a real skill. So I would argue that anybody listening here today has a specific way that they do things, a system, even if they haven't sat down to put it on paper yet. And that's really key because that's really sellable. What's sellable is your approach to problems, your unique strengths. And so if you've had a resume that you haven't touched for 30 years, or if you've been in business for 15 years, I would encourage you to take a moment, take a weekend, and think about the strengths that you have. Think about the results you've achieved over the past 10 to 15 years and your experience in your industry, and put it on paper and start considering what your secret sauce is, because that's where the magic is. That's what sets a resume apart that has job description information, which is important, but that has, key terms in the industry and is saying the same thing as everybody else. Those keywords are really important, but when you can position yourself as a problem solver because you have a system, that is where the magic is. So I would encourage folks who've been in the industry for 15 years or so to really consider what that system is for them, and then to pare it down to 3 or 5 steps that get them results. And it does this magical thing when done right, Jennifer. It gives clarity to how you have an impact in your field. It starts dredging up all of these results that sometimes people forget the achievements that they've had over their career. Right. But when they take a minute and think about how they have an impact, suddenly it sheds light on all of these opportunities and all of these ways that they move the needle that sometimes we forget after 10 years, after 5 years, even after 1 year. So think about your secret sauce. A lot of times, another thing that's really important that can be tricky for people to put on a resume are measurable accomplishments. So that's another chapter we could talk about in a minute. But did I answer your question on the 15 years?
No, that was fantastic. And don't ever feel bad. You're giving such valuable information to everyone out there. So yes, please answer the question. No, I love that. And I think it speaks to why it's so important to be prepared. My fiance is we're night and day. Like I am the misprepared. He is like Mr. Messy over here. And there's been times where that exact situation happened. We recently went through a reorg and, he hadn't been prepared with all his metrics and he's scrambling, trying to figure all this stuff out. And I'm over here like calm and collected. And I'm like, why did you wait this long to do this? Like you should be doing this all along. So definitely don't wait. And that's definitely why I advocate for the master resume, guys. Like have a document with all of your previous experiences, even ones that you deem small and unimportant, because you never know what job you're going to want to apply for and what experience you're going to need to prove you can do that. So you want to have all that information readily available, even if it's not something you're always going to use on your resume every time.
That's a great tip, Jennifer. I hope people take that to heart because like you said, sometimes we know exactly what we want to do next. And oftentimes we get into that thing and then realize, wait, this isn't exactly what I thought it was, or maybe changes beyond our control happen, or you don't care for the industry anymore, or you see something better, a friend is doing something and you're even more excited about what they're doing. So being able to go back and look at your comprehensive experience is really valuable. I think that's a great tip to have a master resume.
Thanks so much. Well, we have a question. And Santok would like to know which one to use, 2-column or single-column resume. So I'll let you take this one, Claire. I feel like it can be opinionated and differ, but I definitely have a strong opinion on this one.
Okay. So I actually don't find that either are better than the other. And so, Jennifer, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. What's most important for me is that your main results, your biggest accomplishments that apply to the position you want are right up top. So you'll have your name, you'll have your contact information. You might have a leadership statement to kind of encapsulate how you have gotten results and the results that you have and what your influence feels like over the last 10 to 15 years of experience. And then I want you to get right to your accomplishments, your major 3, the big 3 that someone is going to say, oh, that's impressive. I'm going to read the rest. So that's, for me, the most important thing. Now, I see a lot of folks who want to pivot to new industries. So if you're looking to focus on transferable skills, a lot of times that can be done really well in a 2-column resume, because you can use the column not only to highlight your contact information, but below it include transferable skills. So say if you're going from oil and gas to engineering or IT, then you can find where those key skills intersect and you can list those out. So it really does depend on your experience and what you're trying to do. But as long as the main focus of your resume is highlighting how you would be effective in the new role, that for me is the most important thing. So Jennifer, tell me what your thoughts are on 2-column versus 1.
Well, for me, I definitely agree. It's not a big deal one way or another if you lay it out correctly. I think just so often in recruiting, I see the 2-column resume done very badly. People don't understand how to do it, and it forces them to have their work experience not at the top, or the important things end up getting pushed to the side, or their job experience is being forced in this tiny little section so that they can have like a skills section in this other column that's all huge. And I'm like, this is not effective. So I would definitely agree with Claire. It's not for me the 2-column versus the 1-column in the essence. It's that doing that format sometimes makes it where your work experience isn't shining through. And that should be the thing that is king, queen. She's Beyonce. Do not upstage her. She needs to be front and center, and nothing else should be upstaging your professional experience. So As long as you're not upstaging, I'd say you could do it either way. It's just I've found a lot of problems with 2-column resumes in that regard.
Yeah, they can get messy. One thing I find that when I get a resume and they're like, I'm not really sure, it just doesn't feel right. A lot of times what is lacking is white space, which is a little counterintuitive because at least when I was in journalism school, I remember very clearly my professors telling me, you cram as much information as you can on that page. And while that was useful if you're trying to have a one-pager or something, or if you're, back in the early 2000s, now resumes do need a little bit of breathing room, and it's for psychology, it's for the eye. So what is going to make somebody look at your resume and want to read it? So I think this is why infographics have become obviously so popular over the years. It's because it's bite-sized, powerful information, and it's easy on the eyes versus, reading large blocks of text. That's typically what I'll receive and needs to immediately be changed, is the large blocks of black and white text that no one's going to spend enough time reading. So you got to hook them, and then you've got to get them to stay on your page to read more and then give you a call. Because in the end, there's really one litmus test for your resume. There's only one point of even having one, and that's to get you a call for the interview. So, yeah.
Well, how do you highlight stuff that you have not done in current position, but it's something that you aim to do? So
that's an interesting question.
Take it away.
That's an interesting question. So I would say if it's not something that you have done, never inflate your experience. And this is across the board, across any industry, because the last thing you want to do is shine on the resume, get in the interview, and be called out for something that maybe you haven't accomplished yet. It doesn't mean you won't accomplish it, but I would first advise everybody to be very clear and honest on their resume. Do not inflate. There's nothing that will blow your credibility than getting caught saying something untrue on your resume. So I want to put that out there first. Now, I don't think this is what you're saying, Snehal. So let me get to your question now. So if you haven't done something in your current position, but it's something that is required if you're talking about qualifications, don't worry about the qualifications. If you can satisfy 50 to 60% of the qualifications on a job application, on an open opportunity, I think you're golden. In fact, less is fine. The point is you want to be solving the problem at hand. So read the job description really carefully. And even if it's not something you've specifically done, think about your experience and what you have done that can relate. Also, I've seen some resumes, especially for folks who want to pivot into new industries or new grads who are just getting into the field, just getting into the arena of their choice, and they haven't had, big wins yet, or they haven't had many years of success yet. And so for those, I think it's entirely appropriate to say what you're aspiring to do. What impact you're prepared to give to this company. So those are a couple ways you can approach it. I hope I answered your question.
No, I think that's great. I think that's perfect. It's definitely, I feel like you need some clarity in this situation of where you're trying to go for sure. Job descriptions are going to be helpful to you. And I think Claire hit the nail on the head. Try to utilize transferable skills. Maybe you don't have that exact skill, but maybe you've done something similar or something you can compare that is, comparable in that way and sort of draw that line between the two. So definitely, that's great. We have a couple more. Oh, okay. This is a good one. What's more important, technical or people/social skills? This is a good one too.
Oh my goodness. It entirely depends. I mean, everybody has a mix of strengths. So play to yours and know your industry. So if you're applying for a job that's very technically heavy, then that's really what you're going to focus on. And if you're going to apply to a job where relationship building is essential, which is in a lot of roles, but not in every role, then you'll want to play up the relationship building if that's your corner of expertise as well. Good question.
For sure. I would also say being in the tech space, something I encounter is for those of you who are really, really technical, like my TPMs, my software engineers, make sure you show your people skills as well. That's the one thing I can notice is that sometimes when your resume is so technical, you don't show how you work with people as well. So for those of you who are technical, make sure you are showing those soft skills as well. Just because obviously we're all still humans at the end of the day, and we do need to know how you interact within those spaces. So just a little caveat there. And oh, this is great. Would you advise to hire a professional resume writer? Well, both Claire and I do that. So I think we would say yes. But I would love, Claire, for you to tell people why. Because I feel like sometimes people don't understand. So.
Sure. 2 reasons. Yes, I would encourage you to hire a professional resume writer if you are not getting traction with your resume currently. So there are a lot of things we can DIY. There are a lot of things we can learn to do. And certainly writing a solid resume can be a learned skill, and one of those as well. But if your resume isn't working for you at the moment, that's when you want to get somebody else's eyes on it. If you're not really sure how to position yourself, you've been out there for maybe 3 to 4 weeks and you're not getting any traction, that's the time you want to reach out to somebody and just get a second eyes and get some advice. The other piece that's really critical that a resume writer can help you with is telling your story. And I don't know if, I'm sure many people on this call can relate, and I know that I can. It's interesting how we're able to see others more objectively and more clearly, and their skills rise to the top. But when we're telling our own story, it's almost because we're so close to it and we know such every minute detail that it can be hard to encapsulate the critical information that needs to be on there. It's hard to pare down our experience because, of course, all of our experience is important. But when it comes to a resume, it's a very focused document. It has a very clear intention, and that is focusing on the highlights that will get you results in the next position. And sometimes that's hard to do for ourselves. So I would say, yes, if you're not getting traction with your resume, call Jennifer, call me. We'll be happy to help you. It's definitely worth hiring a resume writer.
Yeah, and definitely, of course, if you guys, you may not need one, right? I meet with clients a lot of the times and they show me their resume. They're like, I have a problem. I need you to rewrite this. And I look at this and I'm actually like, your resume is in pretty fantastic shape, actually. I think that you're probably having some sort of other issue here, maybe with your strategy or your LinkedIn or interviewing, etc. So, if you're having success with your resume, most definitely, keep tweaking, keep adjusting, and you may not need someone. But I always like to say as well, and it's something I didn't really think about until I entered the coaching space. And it's like even famous soccer players, even Olympians have coaches, right? Even these people who are at the top of their game have people to help them, because we all need to just like tap in sometimes and be like, hey, I need extra assist. You need someone who is a little bit more in tuned than you are. And as Claire said, can see that overarching view that maybe you aren't able to see of yourself. So yeah, definitely love that. Feel free to reach out to me or Claire if you have any questions. And yeah, hopefully that was a good answer for you there. Yeah. And I know Claire has to go here in just a few minutes, so we're gonna take like 2 more questions. Lee said, is it okay to have a multi-page resume?
Yes, I would encourage you to do 2 pages and no more. I tell you this from experience because I have worked with every level of employment. So company owners and C-level, as well as entry level, and everybody in between. There is nothing that cannot be said in 2 pages. And in fact, if you're going beyond 2 pages, now this is a caveat. The caveat is if you're in the medical space, if you're a physician, or if you're in an industry that expects a CV, that's a different thing. So if you're a scientist and you need to include every paper that you've ever done because that's just what the industry is requiring right now, that's when you can do a longer version. There's absolutely nothing that can't be encapsulated in 2 pages. And if you're having trouble keeping it to 2 pages, that's a perfect time to get somebody else's eyes on it, because likely it's an emotional attachment to all the experience that you've had. And you need that objectivity for someone to say, these things can be removed so you can focus on your main objective. So great question. Yes, 2 pages or less. And if you've got 5 years or less of experience, I'd encourage you to keep it to 1. Keep it to one and to the most impactful things that are going to move you forward. And once you've got 3, 4 year, 5 years of experience, then by all means expand it to 2 pages. And if you're knocking it out of the park and bringing in some big numbers within those 5 years, go for 2 pages, but no more than 2 pages, guys. Keep it short. You want someone to not fall asleep reading your resume, and you want them to get through the whole thing. So that is the main point.
Yes, most definitely. Being in the space that I am, I can tell you, I have to read them all. It doesn't matter if it's 10 pages or not, but I'm not happy when I have to do that. I will tell you. When I see a 10-page resume, I'm like, really, really, friend, you're going to make me read this? Okay. So yeah, definitely the shorter, the better. Stick to the highlights. And okay, our last one from Alana. Love you, Alana. Thanks for always being here, friend. And she said, taking resumes one step further, what makes a fire video resume?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes. We were just talking about this yesterday. So video resumes are so hot right now. There are 2 ways that I've seen them done really well. One is in a 2-minute or less video that talks briefly about your experience. Just touch on where you went to school, what your passion is, and your recent major achievements. That would be important to the company where you want to go next. So you've got 2 minutes. This is a challenge. So you want to focus very closely on how you would bring value to the organization. There are all kinds of video tips that you can make sure that you have a clear background and good lighting, and you've got, a professional dress happening. But the main point is to make sure that you are focusing on the value you are prepared to bring to a company, or some ideas you have for them because you've achieved these specific things. And at the end of the video, you have to have a call to action. You have to tell them what you want them to do, because in the end, it's just like a resume. Whereas a resume is coupled with a cover letter. A lot of people get hung up on the cover letter. Don't get hung up on the cover letter, everybody, because the cover letter is where you get to show a little bit of personality, and you get to put that clear call to action at the end. The video resume is very much the same. It's a little bit of your resume, and it's a lot of call to action. Can we set up a meeting this week for 15 minutes? I'd love to share some ideas I have with you on such and such. So that's how you really can be effective in a video call, in a video resume. And you don't have to be fancy or flashy or have graphics. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. In the end, people just want to hire people they like. So smile, get your point across, and practice before you do it. Practice a few times, and then get it out there and see what happens. Send it in the DMs of your LinkedIn to people that you want to connect with after you're connected on LinkedIn. If you're very close to somebody, in email, or if you've been introduced to somebody warmly through email, you can send it in an email as a follow-up. Thank you so much. I just had a few ideas for you. Here's my video. So these things can be used really well. And when done well, they're very powerful.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. And the way that I like to approach this, guys, is very much so how I like to kind of approach the About Me section of your LinkedIn. And that's to sort of take the WAT method. So you may have heard me say this before, guys, but W is who are you? So, definitely address who you are in the video. A, what are your achievements? Specifically the achievements towards the position you're trying to obtain. And T, so WAT, W-A-T, how tie it into the position you're trying to obtain, tie it into your future, tie it into your passions, tie it into the call to action. So really, if you address that sort of WAT method, for me, it checks all the boxes and can kind of keep you on the straight and narrow in that way.
Absolutely. I think the only thing we may not have mentioned was that you also want to make sure you give them a way to contact you. So you can call me at this number, email me at this email address, and include that as well in text after you send the video in whatever form you choose. So tell them what to do and then tell them how to reach you. Really important.
Yeah, no, of course. I honestly wasn't even thinking of that, but yeah, contact information is important, guys. Definitely make sure they can get a hold of you. Well, thank you so much for being here, Claire. I know you are a woman, so we're going to let you get out of here, but I'm sure all of our viewers appreciate all of your amazing advice, and I know I appreciate you, so thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. And speaking of getting in touch, if anybody has lingering questions, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I'm at LinkedIn at Claire M. Davis. And also you can find my website at tractionresume.com. And I've got a free accomplishments prompts builder over there. So if you're struggling with developing the qualitative and the quantitative data to put on your resume, feel free to go over to my website. You can download it for free and start building that secret sauce and building out those metrics for yourself that will help propel your resume to the top of the pile. So feel free to get in touch with me. And, if you've got any questions, and I just appreciate your time. Any time spent with you, Jennifer, is always a joy. So thank you so much for your energy and for having me on today.
Of course. Thank you. We'll chat again soon.
Bye.